Thanks for doing this, Simon. This is pretty cool, man.
And I think we fear failure because we go, what if it kills me? What if this is the thing that destroys me?
Pivoting is really important.
And so we can sometimes learn the wrong lesson from what we experience as well.
You really need to have these dialogues, I feel. And again, this is why asking questions are so important.
And I think that is just business in a nutshell.
100%. That's why it's so important to have coaches.
So
You get in there and you find that GoDaddy password. I know you can do it.
But how long do you want to battle with that hurdle? How long do you want to be stuck here going, I can't figure this out?
The only reason why you hire a coach or you hire a consultant or you work with somebody is because you want to do it faster. Yeah, I definitely applaud you for putting this kind of thing together.
Well, welcome, Blake. Thanks for being here. Great to have
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Oh, good.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Simon.
Could you just give us a bit of a rundown on who you are, what you do, and what you've got going on?
So my name is Blake. I'm from a background of working in tech for like 15 years. And so I have basically two entities right now. The coaching I've been doing a little bit longer than the consulting. The consulting is rather a month, a new project. Basically ended up in last project ended up in a startup that lost funding. And because of that, I was putting in a lot of free hours into a startup that wasn't my company. And I had this moment, I was like, if I'm going to be doing this, I might as well be working my own business. And for lack of a better series of events, that kind of is what happened. I started studying a lot about coaching and getting into working with more spiritual modalities and really being excited about this interacting with people and helping people and being available to serve. When I first had this idea, I was like, maybe this is a good place to put it. And so I just said, hey, I'm thinking about actually helping people with tech. Seems like a lot of people really struggle with it, even though they have really great ideas. And even though I'm kind of still doing that coaching and I've done a lot of educating around it, I've kind of pivoted over the past few weeks, couple months. I've done a few trainings, and something that comes up with a lot of really talented people within this space in a variety of niches is that people get these programs and learn a lot about what they're specifically doing or what that's about. But then they fall kind of trap of, what do I do with this technology? Like they have a lot of missing questions, a little missing pieces. And I hear so many people of varying generations, not just the generation above us, but like before us in some cases, or mine. And they'll be like, I just wish somebody would hold my hand and get me through this. And after hearing it enough, I didn't really think anything about it. And then at some point I was like, oh, I don't think people really need too much help. They don't really need too much work. And I like to try to avoid this term of doing tech support, because tech support implies kind of like catching all the things that people don't want to do. Like I really want to, like my coaching, empower and transform people into being a better versions of themselves. And I can do that with a lot of things, including technology. And that's kind of why I started seeing that there was a big need for this. And I started opening my door to a beta, and I had a huge demand. A lot of people really resonated with this and really just kind of need to be pushed a little bit over that hurdle of the tech challenge. And once they're there, they're very excited about what they want to work on. So it's definitely been very impactful and exciting to build this empowered tech marketing group on School. And I'm really excited of where it goes from there.
I will link all your details down in the video so people can check out your school group and what you've got going on there.
I appreciate that.
I'm always keen to see, not just see, but learn what other people are going through, what they're doing. Business I find fascinating because just the path people take and the experiences they have, I think are pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of a different journey for from a lot of different points of view, right?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I've discovered anyway that business helps develop your character way more than you ever thought it would. It's like, I'm just going to start a business. It'll be fun. It'll be easy. And then you find out that it is all limited by you.
Limited by you and your maturity, and a few other factors. Like you said, it definitely teaches you a lot. And I know that having gone to college and traditional education and coming out, and at some point in my mid-20s meeting a kid that was barely 20 and hadn't gone to college and started a gutter company and was living in a penthouse. It's like, okay, so there was like other ways I could have done this. And he didn't know what the hell he was doing for the first 2 years.
Yeah,
But eventually you learn.
absolutely. And I think part of the first journey of business, I don't know what you've found, but it's kind of just grab the idea and run, but then be willing to learn very quickly on your feet. And yeah,
Pivoting is really important.
yeah, especially early. Like when you get further along, obviously it's more okay. Now you can niche down. Now you can really work on. I've got to target this particular thing and stay in my lane. But when you're first starting, you most of your ideas and concepts are nice but wrong.
Yeah, and there's certain things that'll will work enough, and then you even tolerate a lot of fluff that may actually not be really the best way for you to do something. It's maybe an example of what other people have done, and it is filled with the ability to kind of learn a lot of good hard lessons. But at some point, you realize that there's just enough resistance within that one direction that it's not challenging you to work harder. It's kind of trying to tell you to like look a different direction, and being sensitive and being able to absorb those things is pretty essential, kind of like the pivoting.
We all struggle with that limiting mindset of ourselves. We kind of go, cool, I understand it to this point. That makes sense. And then something comes along and you're like, I don't get it. I don't understand why that person did that and it worked. And then I tried it. And there's a lot of nuances underneath that you, without experience, you don't know. It's like my example with marketing and advertising when I first started. The very first thing I ever did was run radio ads. And somebody, I don't know where I heard it from. I should run radio ads. Okay, cool, I'll do that. I threw like 6 grand into this advertising thing, didn't get a single result out of it. And so my brain said, advertising doesn't work because I tried it and my evidence is it doesn't work. It was like, well, no, for what I was doing, that particular avenue of advertising was the wrong one. Doesn't mean advertising doesn't work. And so we can sometimes learn the wrong lesson from what we experience as well. And then over time, you're like, okay, no, advertising is actually critical to business, but
Right.
you've just got to come at it. You need to align yourself probably with somebody who knows the industry better, somebody who has skills you don't. You just recognize as the business owner, I need these different buckets in my business. I don't have the skills. I'm going to have to go and reach out to other people. I can't actually do everything myself. And I think that's
Yeah.
probably one of the really cool parts of business is once you realize that, you start to actually build a network and you build people to connect with, and you can get a lot further by leveraging other people's skill sets, not just what you've got.
Yeah, we're kind of, especially with businesses this small, we're kind of in this together. And also another thing that I think is really important. I love the example of trying to do print ads and them not working. And it's almost like you got that advice from. Sounds like the kind of advice my dad would give me. Like here I am talking to my dad about how I'm starting to enter a business. He's like, newspapers. You should put some ads in newspapers.
Yep.
and it's funny because that is probably really good advice from an era where that was really good advice. And you see that actually in the tech, like things move pretty fast in here. Like I started this. I'm first year in, right? And
Yep.
when I first started this a few months back, a lot of the advice was MailChimp. You can get a free account with MailChimp, start your email list and these kind of things. It turns out MailChimp doesn't have the automation anymore. That's free. At some point, probably 7 years ago, it was a free service. And so technology adapts, and we need to kind of be aware that sometimes people that aren't new are giving new advice that's really old, and things change and things don't work. And I do see that with sometimes a lot of these offers that coaches work with and operate on. Sometimes people have negative results with a lot of these things because it is outdated information. And it's important to be able to assess and be able to look at information that you're getting and really be able to be like, is this still relevant today? And that can be really tricky, I think, in this space.
I guess even like the school platform, where the whole idea of a lot of these communities are start as a free community, move to a paid platform. that's the same model a lot of softwares are using, where they launch as a very free or very cheap service. And then once they've got a bit of an audience, it's like, well, now we can actually push up our pricing. We can make these add-on features that everyone wants, but they'll be paid. And what was, as you say, like MailChimp, a very cheap, easy service was now getting expensive. And if you're not on top of the what's new, what's working, how you see AI operating and adapting into the digital space, especially in your realm of work, how does that, I guess, impact how quickly things are changing that you see?
I mean, when it comes to technology in general, there's it's either things become outdated or they become replaced. So it's like, is this no longer the solution? It's just maybe kind of an evolution of a solution at some other point. But then what is competing with this that's also trying to change different things and then bring in just new technology, even like with the way that we see kind of AI coming in and things like that. How is that being leveraged and to what extent? And it's so new because whatever we figure out right now in 2024, 2025 is going to be completely different and onwards.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really hard to even predict what's going to happen. I mean, it's essentially to the limit of our imagination almost.
Yeah.
Which is also kind of cool in a way.
I think one of the things that I've watched, though, and I don't know if you're seeing this, where I think a lot of people are trying to jump too fast into the AI as the lazy answer to doing hard work. It's like AI can do everything for me, so I'm going to make an AI everything. And my personal thought is we're too early in the AI iteration to have a good solution. It's like, sure, it can draw a picture, but it's not accurate enough. Or sure, it can do a particular task, but it can't think the whole process through. And I'm watching people, I think, dive too quickly into it from a point of view of being lazy, going, business is hard work. I can just make the AI do everything and that'll be good enough. Volume, quantity over quality in a lot of respects.
Yeah, you do see that with people. I consider that kind of a novice behavior. It's really more or less like, I mean, AI a few years ago would have been a science fiction word. We were using it and some like my background's in tech and we were using it in tech for like statistics and certain other things that were kind of even like just machine learning was kind of the term at the time. So there was this stuff where it was kind of coming in and coming to the surface. You could see the writing on the wall, but there was no disillusionment that it was by any means perfect. It was something that was trained, that was created. So for a lot of people, artificial intelligence has been this very sci-fi thing. And now that it's here, it's like we're all trying, a majority of people that just aren't informed are trying to meet that scientific, that sci-fi version of what AI is. And it's kind of hard to not think that when you first get introduced to it. When you first start seeing the art and you start seeing chat GPT and stuff, our minds are just like, oh, this is going to solve everything. And you can get it initiated and think like, oh, this is like, you give it a list of videos to do. And it's like, it gives you some great ideas. And you're like, on paper, it looks like I've done a lot of work here. I've, previewed all this work that can be done. But then when you actually do the work, you're missing a lot of the work. You're missing the framework or the bones. And it's very obvious when that's not there. We're also getting better at recognizing when it's somebody using an AI, and more. And I think since I'm not in college, I would have been crazy to be in college around this time because I definitely would have been using AI as just like first attempt on everything. But I'm pretty sure like even in the institutions, they're starting to be able to tell like this is clearly written with an AI. There's patterns there. That'll get better, but I also feel like it's not going to replace everything anytime soon. And I think it's obvious to kind of tell that whenever you see it.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think one of the things that I've looked at where it seems to have a big limitation is the creative and the context behind the human version of creative. It can be creative to a point, but as you say, it seems quite obvious it's machine developed as opposed to the creativity that a human being would come up with. And I think there's still quite a stark difference between the two and quite noticeable. It'll be interesting to see whether it can bridge that gap. I love what you're aiming at there, where it's really along that whole old proverb saying of like, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach a man how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime, where the approach of being able to work with somebody to give them a skill rather than just being the person that does the work for them, because then you don't leave a lasting change. You just, as soon as you leave, that whole system falls down. So giving people that skill set and giving them some training to push them in the right direction. And as you were saying that, I was like, so you're the personal trainer of the digital world, because that's exactly what a personal trainer does. They don't do the push-ups for you, but they're there to go,
Right.
one more, come on, one, you can do this. You know what
Yeah.
you've got to do. So
You get in there and you find that GoDaddy password. I know you can do it. I
yeah,
know it's hard. Go through your email. You can find that recovery password. Trust me. Yeah, it's very much like that.
well, people have learned better if they are pushed to have to figure it out themselves than just being told.
Especially anything that seems a lot more intimidating than it really is.
And I think what you're doing is probably, and I'm just thinking this from more the psychology point of view, it's a bit like having that coach if you're a sports athlete or something, where you know that you
Hmm.
can push as hard as you can, because if you fail, you've kind of got this bit of security behind you to catch you if you fall, that you're not just left completely on your own. And I think us as humans, we like the path of least resistance. We like finding the easiest way to get something done. And I think, especially as business owners, we learn quite quickly. The only way we actually learn is going through failures. You don't learn from success. You learn from failing and trying again. And sometimes you just need that pat on the shoulder or the encouraging word to say, it's okay, you can do it. It's all right that this didn't work this time, but you've learned something. And oh, I am actually getting better. Okay, thanks for that. And being able to give
Yeah.
people that encouragement to keep going. Because I don't know about you, but you have those dark days where you go, why on earth did I start a business? This is ridiculous. I should quit. This is horrible. And I think that is just business in a nutshell. So,
Yeah, for sure. The success is accumulation of failures, and also success can be measured by the number of uncomfortable conversations we're willing to have. We constantly are facing ourselves with a limitations of where our true skill sets are, and we still have to be. I even think I watched a video that you were even mentioning about whether or not you have a job or a business, and a lot of people end up just kind of building themselves into a job because they're really good at something,
yep.
and it doesn't have that scalability. Even that may be kind of a temporary direction to go to get a lot of these other responsibilities ingrained in us, so that because I think there is a natural deposition to being in business. You know, a lot of this kind of makes sense intuitively. You know, you offer something and you get money, you receive money for it in exchange. So there's a process of doing that, and that's a definitely a fail market to succeed. And a lot of society has trained us, I think, to not see that as positive.
Yeah.
And it couldn't be further from the truth, especially when you're in, you know, sometimes, like you said, I kind of don't want to do this. And I've kind of ruined myself in a way, because then when I think about what I would be doing if I was working for an entity of some sort, I'd have to answer for all my failures, you know, and especially in tech, there were times where you would cause an issue and it would shut down the entire product, you know, the thing that's making you money, and people would lose money by the minute. So yeah, there's all these kinds of things that happen, but it's a lot easier for me to screw up my own little train here and put it back on the track than it is to do somebody's else, even though it maybe has a bigger impact.
Yeah, look, I think it's interesting you bring it up that way. I don't think the impact is any less with you doing it for yourself versus for somebody else. I think it is perceived risk, because
Mm.
you will let yourself off the hook with certain things that you know somebody else would say that's not good enough. So sometimes I think we can lower our own standards to go, it's all right, it's just my own thing. I did this myself for years when it came to charging invoices. That I would, if I worked for somebody else, I would be, well, it was 7 hours on the job, so it's this much. When it came to me, I was like, oh, because I had a poor money mindset of going, I'd hate to get that invoice. Oh,
Right.
I'll make that invoice less because that makes me feel better. And it took me years to realize I was robbing my family of that money, not the
Mm.
customer. I was going to somebody in $1 million home doing work and worried about $200. And I was taking that out of play. Where's the bottom line? That's coming out of the bottom line, which is what I had to take home to the family. So I think we can go the other way. We kind of let ourselves get into positions that we wouldn't if we had somebody else keeping us accountable.
100%.
And
Yeah.
being able to, it's funny you touch on the failure side of things too, because it's a side project that one day I will get around to. But a book I would like to finish writing is around this idea of failure actually being positive. And if you knew that you had to fail 1,000 times before you became successful, how would you approach failure?
Mm-hmm.
And the whole idea is that we have to go through failures to get to that success point. We just don't know our number. But if it was that fixed 1,000 times you need to fail and then you will succeed, I think we would approach failure with a much healthier attitude of, it's okay, I've got to get through this anyway, so let's just get it done. And I think we fear failure because we go, what if it kills me? What if this is the thing that destroys me?
What if I'm broke and I'm under a bridge for the rest of my life? You
Yeah.
know, like, yeah. And I don't know. I guess maybe that's just kind of the generation we got raised with that kind of had that opinion, because I'm sure at some point it was that risky. But it's definitely very much rooted in some kind of irrationalness. It's an ego protecting us. There's parts of us that are super insecure with a lot of those things, and definitely don't want us to step out of our comfort zone. And as soon as things become uncomfortable, it's like, well, it's all going to shit, you know. Sorry, I didn't mean to cuss on you.
Is this something that you find in what you do in coaching people, where you hit that kind of limitation where people just hit those fear walls and just, I can't do it. It's all going to fail, and they hit the doom and gloom as soon as something gets a bit tough. That protective mode, as you say, kind of goes, let's run away from this. This is dangerous. You come up with every excuse under the sun to get out of this. It's not worth pursuing. And you need to sort of really step into that space of going, hey, this is the bit where I need to help coach you get over that hill, and then find that once they're past it, that things kind of are a bit smooth sailing on the other side for a while.
Yes. It's really important to be able to detect those things, and because sometimes it's very obvious what the issue is. And if you really try to tell people, oh, I know what this problem is, and you try to tell that to them, they're not gonna, they may actually agree with you and listen to you and everything, but they're not gonna really get it. They're gonna be like, yeah, you're right. And then they're gonna go about with it. You really have to ask questions to find the root of why that's the behavior, and what's behind it, what's the relationship. And once they can kind of tell what that is, then they can resolve that. Then these kind of things kind of, take care of themselves. Then maybe they're not as risk adverse. They're like, you know what, I've accounted that. I know what I'm doing. I'm confident in myself. I can take these risks and I can take the consequences because they're probably not that unrealistic.
Do you find that you have that same thing where you first come and deal with clients where they've got these challenges and hurdles, but you've got to do quite a bit of work to get them to understand their own way of thinking and how the way they think is limiting things, and those sort of things, where you're not really dealing with the problem, you're dealing with the person before you can ever get to the problem?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You kind of have to know where people are coming from. And again, this is why asking questions are so important. I've had plenty of people who have kind of been like, I have this problem, and then they'll turn around and give me another example of how they don't have the problem, and I'll just point it out to them. I'm like, well, you talked about how you felt that this wasn't something that you were capable of doing, and then you give me another example here shortly after of you actually doing it, and they're like, oh yeah, I guess that's true. Because the thing is like, you even mentioned about how you can change your perspective on things. Really, a choice. You can choose to be happy about things. You can choose to be okay with something. You can acknowledge being upset and still choose to the behavior, and everything you choose is the freedom. And it really is that simple, but it's also that complex. And that's probably why there's a lot of resistance to it, because a lot of people want to wallow in the struggle, because it does come from a place of comfort and ease and familiarity. Some people have kind of had this struggle their entire life. And so the idea of fixing it is new and threatening. And there's so much resistance against it. But the reality is that it's also very simple if people kind of take the minute to look at it and see it like that. That's why it's so important to have coaches. And like you said, you had coaches in the beginning. I believe that I'm had coaches my entire career, because there's never going to be a moment where I feel like I figured it all out. And there's always going to be somebody that kind of has solved the intricacies of the problem that we're in, because there are niches in this space. There's so many specific tie-ins to everything, because some people have dug in a specific hole and found gold. And they're like, let me show you how I dug this up, and you can find some yourself.
Yep. No, absolutely. And I think what you're talking about there, being able to leverage off other people with coaching, with, even free resources that you can get, YouTube videos and tutorials, and you can do a lot to learn and train yourself in areas that you struggle with. But I think what you were talking about, like having a coach and somebody who can walk you through and guide you through to see some of the things you struggle with. Back to what I originally had my issues with the advertising. If I had had a coach then that was saying, no, advertising's not bad, you might just be looking in the wrong area to do it. That maybe that's not where your target market is. Have you built a client avatar? What's that? And just giving some people some guidance to go, have you considered this? Have you considered that? And opening up their worldview.
It's funny, like, I think the big argument about coaching and consulting and all this stuff is that, because I've had this come up in some discovery calls, and honestly, one of the big things I even say is that does people really need this? And I'd even go out and say the answer is no. Nobody needs it. You can find all this information on your own. The only reason why you hire a coach or you hire a consultant or you work with somebody is because you want to do it faster.
Yep.
You want somebody to remove, like we were talking in the beginning about how there's so much failure you have to go through to get to success. You're not going to solve, and I think it even comes of the opposite way, where people get really infatuated with hiring a coach because they're like, sometimes a coach has, big price tags. Sometimes they have $50,000, $30,000 for a commitment with them. And when you pay all this money, I think the psychology that's happening there is, once I pay this person this money, my problem is going to be solved. Yeah. And that's not true either. It doesn't remove all the failures. It just removes the number of failures, and it gets you pointed to the best failures to make for the value. And I think that's really hard for a lot of people to get when they're kind of new to the space, because there are so many coaches and there's so many people out there and so many different things. It feels very hand wavy at times and wooey to some regards. So I think though that where we're at right now is, and it didn't just happen in the past couple of years. It's been happening over the past decade, but there's a boom happening within this space, within this method. I think it's going to compete with higher education in just terms of, or maybe even vocational type work, where, people aren't, I think in a lot of cases, ready to spend this much money on coaches. But when they realize I was going to spend this much money in school, and I was going to spend 4 years doing it, and I was going to learn a lot of things that weren't essential to what I wanted to do. And when you can actually start learning a concentrated formation of what you want to know within a few months, and then invest in something else for a few months, and invest in something else for a few months, within a year, you can be even further along than that kid that I met that didn't go to college, that was cleaning gutters, and found a way to make a business, make a whole bunch of money, just kind of doing the work. And that's what this, I think, industry is going to help people do, and that they're going to really realize to do.
Where you're focusing has got a huge potential, because I think we've got so many Instagram influencers out there going, hey, you start a business, hey, you do this. And they're not wrong. Like, sure, there's all these business opportunities that exist, but without knowing the how-tos on the back end of it, you can very quickly get lost in what the heck do I do with this? I've not come up with this. And as you say, the coaching takes it from, it's going to take me 10 years to go through these lessons, to I can do it in 6 months with some guidance. And I speak from experience, I spent the better part of a decade working and running my electrical contracting and solar contracting business. I was a good tradesman, but no idea how to run a business. And I ran it into the ground because I didn't understand how to run a business. I just knew how to do the work.
And you had no any mentoring or anything through that
Didn't
process?
even know to look for it. It was just,
Well,
I'm a good tradesman, so I should start my own business. Everyone's like, "You're great, you should do your own business." Yeah, sure, that sounds great. And then I met my now wife, and she was like, she's a chartered accountant. So I was talking to her about the business, and she's like, "Oh, we'll have to sit down and have a look at your books at some point." I was like, "Oh, whatever that means." Like 2 years into running the business, and she's like, second, third time she'd brought it up. I'm like, "What do you mean books?" She's like, "All your accounts, your record, sort of how the business is tracking and whatever." And I was like, "I can print you off a bank statement if you really." I'm thinking, weird thing to ask. I'm like,
it's like the dog sitting in the coffee shop and everything's on fire. He says it's
yeah.
all fine.
And so she's like, "Have you in Australia? We've got to put in quarterlies, BASs."
Yeah,
And
you have to
so
do something similar in the states.
yeah, and so she's like, "So when did you put your BAS in, or something to that effect?" I'm like, "What's a BAS?" And she was like, "Oh no." She rang the tax office and actually got us onto a payment plan, and they were about to really come after me because I'd gone 2 years and not paid tax.
Oh wow.
Because I went, well, it's my money. I went to work and I had no business training at all, no idea.
Oh wow. That's
And so,
intense.
and I'm sure I'm not alone, but it took me a decade to really get to the point of going, I need professional help to fix. I'm just hitting these wall after wall. I need to invest into learning to be able to get past this because I've tried for nearly a decade and I can't do it. And I think to your point of having coaches, if you start with learning and start with a coach right at that early stage, you can skip that decade that I did.
Absolutely.
The bit people need to understand, it's not that a coach is coming along saying, "Well, I'm so important, you need to give me $10,000 to work with me." It is that that person can save you 10 years of your life. And what's that worth to you? And like for me, if I knew what I know now about coaching, I would have done it right at the beginning, and I would have borrowed money from friends and family to get it paid for because of what I have found that it has done for me since then.
That's
Um,
why it's worth it. You know,
Absolutely.
100%. And then you take that same model into like even like the platforms that are being made in school. Like similarly the kind of one that you're making. The paywalls for these groups. And I know a lot of this is in beta. And a lot of us have our free groups that break open temporarily. We want to build a community. We want to get people kind of involved. And then the idea is kind of to start slowly charging for that. And what's really great is that it does give people, like, again, that's like an example of how we're at the beginning of this. We're in the infancy of this.
Yeah.
At some point, it's not going to even make sense for that to kind of start because people are going to gain a lot of insight from all kinds of walks of lives. And having that curriculum kind of cultivate within these communities is going to refine it and make it even more concentrated. And the model of paying monthly for that, people aren't going to necessarily probably even need to pay $20,000 unless they want to be part of a community for the long term, because they're definitely getting, they're seeing a performance on that month to month. That's definitely the future, and more people are going to start. I really do. I mean, I say this a lot, but unless you're going to be a doctor or something, I just don't know that people are going to go to college here in the next 10 years, especially when you look at people that can't afford college in other countries.
Yeah.
But maybe they can afford some kind of monthly subscription to be involved in these communities and do that.
And one of the reasons that I'm trying to put together what I'm doing is that recognition that I don't hold all the answers, that I'm good in certain aspects, and there are certain aspects that I'm really not. But if I can help build not just a community of people who are wanting the help, but a community of people that can do the helping, then we can do so much more for so many more people because we've got so much more resource available. And I
It's
think
a meta community,
absolutely.
Community of communities for sure.
And being able to then say, we've got these other people we can work with. Blake's got this stuff going on here. This person's got this. And someone might just go, that's what I need. And off they go over there. And I operate this across life, across business. And I'm sure you're the same. The aim is to help somebody do better, get the results they're looking for. And if that means going, hey, I'm not the best fit for you, but I know someone who is,
Absolutely.
feel good by going, I've helped that person. And
Yeah. And also you did it with the least amount of energy that you could,
yes,
because now you're able to focus on the other people that really do need your specific medicine, because now you have more time.
yes,
So you're able to help people while helping people.
absolutely. So how do you find, I guess, how do you come across your clients? Are they more referral based, or are you actually advertising sort of into the wider world to try and connect with people?
YouTube, I'm creating content on there, and it's usually a higher ticket item. So it has been, I've done a lot of betas with it, but even doing my betas has been tricky because I have to niche down more, and I still have a lot of work left on bringing me down to meeting a specific pain point, right? There's a few things that kind of tie together, and it's becoming more clear as I just kind of demonstrate it to people. When I first had this idea, I was like, maybe this is a good place to put it. And so I just said, hey, I'm thinking about actually helping people with tech. Seems like a lot of people really struggle with it, even though they have really great ideas. Would anybody want to do a beta of this? And I literally had 15 people message me within 3 days, which is way different than the response I got with the coaching.
Yep.
And I feel like there's various reasons why. One, it's very niched. It's really niched down. It's specifically for new business owners. It's like kind of a little bit older or younger, in the 30 to 60 range. A lot of them have enough money to invest in courses, so they probably have a little bit of money to invest in some tech consulting side of things. And also, I don't see a lot of people doing it. So it was kind of a perfect storm. I got those people in, and this was before I even thought about doing school with this. And I started working with them, and I just wanted to hear their questions, understand what they did. And I started getting emails and started seeing the point of that. Anyway, over time, I've even gotten referrals from it because people have been really happy with how I've been able to help them. They really do feel satisfied. I can tell that in some cases, it wasn't a specific pain point that was keeping them asleep, but it's something that they had to visit a lot of times throughout the day. And it was something they were constantly putting energy into defer, which is, I probably should do this. I probably should do that. I won't do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to deal with that. And so here I come when it's finally like, okay, look, we're going to just knock this out. And then they're like, oh, this isn't that hard. It goes back to the thing we talked about earlier, where it's like, oh, this isn't that hard. They just needed the proper person to kind of bridge them there and show them that it wasn't. And when that happens, people like to talk, because I feel like it's when you finally can reach the itch in the back. It's like, I finally got it. Everybody needs to know. Then other people are curious because they want the same thing, and that's been happening a lot in this for this one service. I do want to move on to ads, but I'm still kind of exploring that. Even like when you mentioned like an ads coach, it was like, man, I probably need to look at an ads coach here soon. But I definitely want to start exploring that, especially for the school community, because there's all kinds of really cool the metrics with the meta pixel and stuff. A lot of those kind of things, I really geek out on that kind of stuff, because again, it's right at the border of marketing and tech. And those are the kind of lessons that I really want to know more about. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that want to know the bare minimum about it to keep their curiosity going and keep their interest going, so that way they can know how to leverage it at some point when it's the right time.
Yep. So are you looking to work more primarily with individuals in that process, or are you looking at a corporate avenue to this as well, or what's your?
Yeah, I would say it's I think right now, like it, and again, whenever you mentioned it, kind of, are you creating a business or a job? I definitely feel that in some capacities, a lot of the direction I'm going is very job like, because I'm drawing off of practices I've seen and modeled throughout my life. But I'm also aware that there is the trap of it not scaling. And I did actually go to school. It's funny talking about college. My college education was for business. So this is actually the first time where I've actually been in the capacity of leveraging my education after 15 something years of a career. So when I'm thinking about kind of the people I'm going to serve, it's like right now, it's like, let me help people one-on-one, because I feel like that's the best thing I can do. If I can, when I turn that into some monetization, it's going to pay more for the hours that I have. It's going to be a good way to kind of fund up. But I feel like the move there is to get into group coaching. It offers a better value for the client because you can charge less and you can satisfy more people and work less hours. It really helps everybody. So I think there's appropriate hybrid way of doing that, and then leaning more into the group sector, and then charging an extra premium for the one-on-one and just doing it less and scaling out of it a little bit. And I feel like that's kind of the natural way to go about this. But in terms of kind of creating it from something out of that, I definitely feel that getting and accumulating a lot of this information into a course is the ultimate like package that you put on this net that you make when you kind of get into this space. You find all the low-hanging fruit for people, you want to knock it all out, you put it in one space, and you find a good way to put it in front of the people that it's important to. And that's how I think problems are going to be solved with this type of space.
Yeah, and I think the way that you're, especially being early on with what you're doing, it gives you doing the one-on-ones and doing, I guess, approaching it the way you are now, even though it might be almost job-like more than business, tree-like, it gives you credibility when you're building your brand, because obviously anything coaching-based is a personal brand because you're the face of it. It's your skill set. And I think this is something people miss when they look at pricing on coaching is, as you mentioned, that person who's running that business is trying to run a business that's profitable. It's not just trying to earn an hourly rate wage. They need money to be able to invest in maybe software to build out something they're trying to do, or whatever their other growth plans are. Everything costs money. If you're just working one-on-one and you're only charging an hourly rate for your work that's quite low, then you're going to die as a business. And so you've got to pay your taxes. You've got all your back end. You might have an admin person you're paying. All this stuff people don't see. And so to make that work, there has to be these other avenues in a business to go, how can we generate money for the business so that everything stays afloat and can grow, because that all costs money, without making it so unaffordable nobody can touch it. And I think, as you mentioned, like having community-based, having one-to-many type training where you can give value to people on a larger scale, reduce the cost for the person, but also increases profit and revenue for you, because now you've got the ability to go, if I can create this information that everybody needs one time and then sell it cheaply so it's really accessible, but it means that I now don't have to reteach this thing to every single person all the time. I can just go, here's the course where this exists. Then everybody benefits. And I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with when it comes to the money side, where they go, well, I think you're ripping me off because you're charging me this much money for this thing. And you go, but that thing took me a decade to learn, or whatever this thing is. And really trying to understand value versus price, the value you get out of what you're doing in coaching and helping people get over hurdles they couldn't get over themselves. But how long do you want to battle with that hurdle? How long do you want to be stuck here going, I can't figure this out? And then go, I could actually pay a small amount of money and fix my problem. It kind of becomes a no-brainer when you put it into those terms. But I think we've also seen so many people do it poorly and try to rip people off and scam people out of money, that we as human beings are apprehensive in the first place of going, do I trust this person? Which I think comes back to what you're doing now. You're building your brand. You're building the credibility to say, here's this content I've got on YouTube. Here's this content I've got on school. Here's what I can do for you. And then people start to see, oh, there's actually value in what this person is delivering. I'm now prepared to pay for that. And I think that part of the business aspect actually just takes time. There's not a lot of shortcuts to that other than just bulk amount of really high value content. There's only so much you can put out in a day. But giving people the ability to see you, and part of the reason I wanted to do these interviews was to be able to get people to see you, see what you do, hear from you, see that you're actually real about what you do and what you can deliver for them, and go, oh, actually, I resonate with this person. I actually think I'd really like to work with them. Hey, how can I find them? That would be really cool.
It's 100%. This is the equivalent of networking in the virtual space. Yeah. That's why I was really excited whenever you offered this. It's like I love remote working. I never want to go back to an office again, even though I would like to go. I wouldn't mind having a co-working space and going to it and working. But those kind of things is that we really need to have these dialogues. I feel understand what each parties are doing and just talk about talk about this stuff. And over time, we're going to have conversations and things are going to come up because we're all going to reach the limit of what we're at. And we're always going to need to maybe know somebody else.
If we're going to help somebody in business, if it costs them 10 grand, they should have a fair expectation that they can make $100,000 by the time they're done. So that we give way more than we ever ask for, which means that people still see us as a great value and they will refer us. And referrals are the strongest form of endorsement for what we do anyway. And so like the fact that you're already at a stage where you've done work for people who are referring you is a good indicator that A, there's a market, and B, that people like what you do so much that they're telling other people about it. Even if it's on a small scale at the moment, it's still a good indicator that you've got a good track for what you're doing. So I think just to close things out, I guess one of the things I wanted to really hit on is at the moment, if somebody's struggling with that tech side of things in their business, they're just hitting those hurdles and going, I'm going to burn my computer in my office down because I just can't get over this. A, how do they find you? And B, in a nutshell, what is it that you could provide?
Sure. So the number one place to find me for this specific thing is in my school, which is Empowered Tech Marketing. I think I gave you the link earlier. And so finding me there is a good place to start, especially if you're listening to this recently. It's April 11th right now, because I only have a few more seats for free within my school community. And that's going to be flipping up to probably $5 a month here soon, which I still feel is very fair because I'm very responsive to, one, answering questions within that community of any type that come up. I'm going to have some content releasing pretty soon on there for courses, and it's a lifetime price. So the price is probably going to go up in the next few months as I get more in there. Another thing that I do within that community is I'm going to also do a once a month. I'm going to do, and I haven't really worked out the details on this because I haven't played with group coaching and Google Meets, but in the future, I'm going to have once a month for people in the community, basically a 1 to 2 hour town hall for people to come on and ask questions. I'm going to try to keep it within a 15-minute span so I could solve issues live on the call with people, and even maybe just kind of flip my screen around, try to do my own pecking around on it and just kind of give an orientation and use that as material. And then for clients, if people want to work with me one-on-one, I do offer 1 month containers for four 1 hours, one each week. And then also a group call for just the people within the VIP. So it's a very small group of people that may actually be there at the time. So you may actually just get a whole extra hour. and essentially you can get, for the price of 4 hours, you can get 6 hours of work with me on a month-to-month basis. And that's basically the best way to reach out to me there. And then also with my coaching, BlakeMcNeal.com for my coaching and booking any of those things, newsletter, and all those little intricacies.
Well, it's been awesome chatting to you, Blake, and really appreciate you jumping on. And I will have all of your details linked up if people want to go and check out your school group, your website, what it is that you do. They can find you there. And been great chatting with you.
Yeah, you too, Simon. I really appreciate this. I hope this isn't the last time we talk.
No, it'd be great to catch up again.
Yeah, man. Take care. Good luck to you out there.
Awesome. Thanks very much.